Yes, Didi. Okay, thank you, Didi. So we'll see the introduction of the book. So the book of Esther is the 17th book in the Bible, and can anybody fill in the blank? How many chapters does the book of Esther has? Okay, so so the book of Esther has 10 chapters and 167 verses in it. The shortest chapter is chapter 10. It has only 3 verses, and the longest is chapter 9, and it has 32 verses. Um, it is between dash and dash. Can anybody please tell me?
Nehemiah and Job.
Yes, it is between the book of Nehemiah and Job. And the interesting fact about the book of Esther is that this book does not have the word God or Lord mentioned in it. And that's the beauty of this book, because God works behind the scenes, and the author is anonymous, and the main intention is to discover God through his works in this book. Okay. So this is the only book in the Bible that has the word India mentioned. In Esther 1, verse 1, we see that the word India is mentioned. And Esther is the only queen after whom a Bible book is named. Not even kings had that honor. So kings also did not have an honor to have a name after them. So Esther is the only book in the Bible that is named after the queen herself. Now we'll move on to the storyline of the book of Esther. Now, the first point is Vashti's refusal and decision for new queen. The second thing that we see is Esther appointed and Mordecai saves king. Haman is promoted and Jews' death decree. Mordecai's lamentation and Esther's command. Esther's first feast and Haman plots to kill. King honors Mordecai. Haman ashamed. Esther's second feast. Haman is hanged. Esther's petition for a counter decree. Victory of the Jews and fame of Mordecai. Now, we all are well versed with the story of Esther, but to put it in a nutshell, I'll try to summarize it in a very short way so that we'll all have an understanding of what is the story all about. So, the story is about a king. The king's name is King Ahasuerus. Now, this king was a very rich king, and he ruled over 127 provinces. And in the first chapter only, we see that in order to show how rich he was and to show his glory, he hosts a 180 days feast in which all the officials and all the people take part in it. And following this, there is a 7 days feast. In these 7 days, all the rich and poor, small and big, and all the officials and nobles, they are all invited to take part in this feast. And the wine is served in golden vessels, and there is no like the people are not forced to drink. Like it's like they can take part in it. Like however they want. So on the seventh day of this feast, the king commands that his queen, whose name was Queen Vashti, he commands her to come and display her beauty in front of his people. So we see that Queen Vashti, she refuses to come, and this hits the king's pride, and uh, as well as his other officials. Like there are 7 eunuchs, and one of them is Memucan. So Memucan, he gives a very bad advice to the king, and he advises him saying that how can somebody come and refuse just to obey you? You know what you should do? You should dethrone her. You should remove her, and in place of her, you should keep another queen, because looking at her, all the other women in your province will do the same with your officials. They will stop to listen to their officials. So, in a fit of rage, King Ahasuerus, he um, signs a decree, and decree is made and is set out to all the other provinces in um, all the 127 province, looking for a queen who would take the place of Queen Vashti. So there is a man, Hegai, who was king's chamberlain. He is set as the keeper of the women, and he was in charge of all the women who will be taking part in this competition to be the next queen. So we see in chapter 2, we see a Jew is introduced. This Jew's name is Mordecai. He's a Jew and he's the son of Jair, and he is he's an uncle to a fair and beautiful woman. Her name is Esther, also known as Hadasha. So she was taken along with other virgins, and she was under the custody of Haggai, who was the keeper of the women. Now she pleased Haggai, and the beautiful part about it that Mordecai adopted Esther to be his like his daughter, because Esther had lost both his mother and father when she was young. So Mordecai walked every day near the court where Esther was used to stay, to make sure whether she is all right or not. So when the day comes when Esther is to be presented before the king, she does as Haggai has taught her to do, and she asked for things that Haggai trained her to do. And then we see that Esther uh, was presented before the king, and she found favor in the sight of everyone, and she was appointed as the new queen. She was uh, now the queen, and in place of Vashti, she was the queen now. So Mordecai, um, it so happened that one day Mordecai, as his routine was, while he was on in the king's gate, he hears a plot that Bigtha and Teresh, these two were the officials of the king. They were planning to lay hands on the king. They were planning to kill the king. So Mordecai overhears their plan, and he goes and tells Esther about it, and Esther informs and the king about and wants, and when the investigation is made about on the subject, Bigatan and Teresh are found guilty. So the incident is written in the book of Chronicles. So the chapters in chapter 3, we see the villain is introduced to us. Chapter 3 introduces us to the villain. The villain's name is Haman. He is an Agagite, and he is the son of Hamandata. Now he was promoted, and the king promotes him, and he a law is passed that all the king's servant and everybody should bow down before him. But then Mordecai refuses to bow down. This hurts Haman, and Haman pride is hurt, and he tries to find out about this Mordecai. Who is this person? Why is he refusing to bow down before me? So when he finds out about Mordecai, and him being a Jew, he plans to kill all the Jews because Mordecai was a Jew. So uh, he makes a plan, and he gathers his people. He tried to cast Pur, or Lot, and then in order to decide the day on which all the Jews will be executed. So the day that they chose was the 12th month. That was the month of Adar, and on the 13th day. So it's like 13th day in the month of Adar. So that was the day chosen for the Jews to be annihilated or executed. Now, when Haman goes and presents this in front of the king, he tells the king, there are a certain group of people called the Jews who refuse to obey you, who refuse to follow your laws. They are of no use to you. So let's kill them. And in return, I will pay 10,000 talents of silver, 10,000 talents of silver for their death. So when the king gets to know about this, he signs a decree with a signet ring. Now, when anything is sealed or signed with a signet ring, it cannot be reversed. So a death decree is pronounced on the Jews. That was to be carried out on the 13th day on the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. Now, when Mordecai comes to know about this, he laments, and he rents his cloth. He put on a sackcloth, and he goes in front of the king's gate. When the maids and chamberlains of Queen Esther sees him, they come and inform Esther about what is happening. They talk to each other through a eunuch named Hatash, and Esther tries to find out what is wrong with Mordecai. When she comes to know about how a death decree has been pronounced on her people, and Mordecai, he sends a copy of the decree, and he asks her to go and reveal her identity in front of the king. Then Esther comes and tells Mordecai. through Hattaj, that if I reveal my identity, if I go and uh, if I go and plead for my people, I will I will be killed, because a person cannot go in front of the king unless the king has commanded the person to see. Then Mordecai says that Mordecai answers and says that, do not think about yourself, but think about your people. If it does not please you to go in front of the king, it's okay. God will make another provision. But what if God has put you in a position uh, like that in order to save his people? So we see that Esther says that, she says that she asks Mordecai to fast for her, not to drink or not to eat for 3 days, and she will do the same along with her maids. So Mordecai went his way and did what Esther has asked him to do. So we see that Esther then uh, we see Esther banquets. There are two banquets. In the first banquet, Esther, um, Haman and both the King Ahasuerus is called, and then when they are drunk, King Ahasuerus asks Esther, "What is it that you want? Why did you call me?" Esther says that, "I want that you will come. You and both Haman are supposed to come for another feast as well." After the feast is over, the first feast is over. Haman and both Ahasuerus is their heart is merry with wine. We see Haman, as soon as he gets out of the feast, he encounters Mordecai again, and Mordecai again, he refuses to bow down in front of him. Haman's pride is hurt again, and he plans. He goes back and he speaks to his wife, who advises him that you should prepare a gallows, and this man should be hanged. How dare he refuse to bow down before you? So a gallows was put out. It was set for was made for Mordecai to be hung there and killed. Now, on that very night, King Ahasuerus is not able to sleep. And we see that he asks for the book of Chronicles to be read. And while the book is being read, he remembers of what Mordecai has done for him. And he asks Haman. At the same time, Haman also enters into the palace. And he asks Haman, what should we do for for a person who who saved my life. So Haman, he thinks that he's talking about him. So he says that such a person should be honored. He should be made to wear royal clothes, and he should be put on a horse, and he should be made to wear a crown. And then King Ahasuerus takes his advice, and instead of um, honoring Haman, Mordecai is honored. This further humiliates Haman, um, and then finally we see that Esther's second banquet is there, and in which again um, the king Ahasuerus and Haman, they come in. They are again merry with the wine, and finally King asks her, "What is it that you want?" Esther says that there is someone who wants to kill me as well as my people. King asks her, "Who is that person?" Then Esther reveals that Haman is the one who wants to kill. After investigating, the king find it to be true that yes, it is true that Haman is the one um, who is planning to kill Esther as well as her people. Finally, the gallows which was prepared for Mordecai, Haman is hanged on it. And as said earlier, something that is signed with a signet ring cannot be reversed. So there is a counter decree that Esther devises, which says that the Jews can fight back if if people are coming to kill them on the 13th day of the month of Adar, they can fight back. And we see in verse in chapter 9 that the Jews defend themselves and they slay their enemies, and they are victorious over the people who over the Persians. And finally, in verse 10, we see how Mordecai is elevated, and he is put next to the king, so he's second in the whole entire nation. So this was about the story of Esther. Now there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from various characters that are there in this book. So we will look at the lessons that we can learn. So there are 9 characters that we can draw lessons from. Queen Vashti, Memucan, King Ahasuerus, Queen Esther, Haman, Mordecai, Zeresh, Harbona, and Hegai. So the first is Queen Vashti. Now we saw that she refused to come at the king's commandment. So when this commandment came from the king, Vashti did not carry out his orders because she knew that wine had been freely used and that Ahasuerus was under the influence of the intoxicating liquor. For her own husband's sake, as well as her own, she decided not to leave her position at the head of the women of the court. She acted in harmony with pure conscience. Vashti refused to obey the king's command, thinking that when he had commanded to himself, he would commend her course of action. Vashti thought about the honor of their marriage. Her body was only for the king, her husband. She had to preserve its dignity, even at a high cost. This decision of her reflects her wisdom as a queen and deep love as a wife. She must have been heartbroken to have lost her husband and her position as a queen without any fault of hers. Her good intent was misunderstood as disrespect. So these are the lessons that we can learn from Queen Vashti. She refused to come in front of the king because she wanted to honor her marriage. She wanted to make sure that her body was only for the king, her husband, and she wanted to preserve its dignity. So we must reason out wisely before making any decisions in life. If it causes us to break God's law, it's a bad decision. For example, if you got a good job but no Sabbath off, if you accept that job, it's a wrong decision. If it causes us to sacrifice our moral values, it's a bad decision. For example, you got a marriage proposal. The partner is nice and good, but not an Adventist. If you marry, then it's a wrong decision. If our decisions make us happy at the cost of someone else's loss, it's a bad decision. Example, you wanted a new phone, you forced your parents to take a loan and buy it, it's a wrong decision. So our decisions in life may be misunderstood by others. Our good intent may be misinterpreted as disrespect, but God knows and He will handle our case. Just like how Queen Vashti's decision was misunderstood and she was dethroned, likewise, when we decide something and we make decisions wisely, our decisions may be misunderstood. It may People may think that we are trying to disrespect them, but God knows the decisions that we make, and He will handle our case. The next lesson that we can learn from is Memucan. Now, Memucan was a eunuch. He was one of the wise men of the king. So when Vashti refused to come, the king, in his drunkenness, asked the wise men that knew law and judgment, and the seven princes which sat first in the kingdom, "What shall we do unto the queen Vashti, because she had not performed the commandment?" We see that Mamukan, one of the seven princes, immediately gave his unwise counsel. The king had unwise advisers. They argued that it would be a power given to women that should be to her injury. The council overlooked the holy institution of marriage, the great gift of love between husband and wife. Namukan spoke words that could come only from someone who had a heart of stone. Let's read uh, Esther chapter 1, verse 19. Here it says, "If it pleases the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she." So let it be written among the laws of Persian and Medes that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. So in a marriage, in a moment, he ended their marriage, their bond, everything. She could no more even see the king. She could not even have a chance to explain why she said no. How wicked could Memican be? So there are Memicans in the world today who encourage spouses to break up just like that, as if marriage were nothing, as if the covenantal vows made in the church could be broken easily. They say another is better than she and he. They say let her him come no more before you, block him, change your place of stay, etc. Beware of letting anyone decide for your covenant made before God. Take time to reason out, settle things, resolve and reunite. Memucan never would know the pain he caused Vashti by his unwise counsel. Let us beware of Memucans around us, and let us never be like Memucan. So this Memucan gave a very bad advice that ended a marriage relation between king and the queen. So we need to be aware of such people who give all these unwise advices to us, because marriage is a covenant made before God. So the next lesson that we can learn is from King Ahasuerus. Now, King Ahasuerus, also known as King Xerxes, needed the counsel that we find in Proverbs chapter 31, verses 3 to 5. Give not thy way to that which destroyeth kings. It is not for kings. It is not for kings to drink wine, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. And Proverbs chapter 20, verse 1. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging. Whosoever deceiveth thereby is not wise. So there is this proverb that we find where which warns the kings not to drink, because drinking will make them forget the law and pervert judgment. King Ahasuerus was wrong in this area. Uh, Esther verse 1 verse 10 says, when the heart of king was merry with wine. 1 verse 7 says, royal wine in abundance, no self control. King Ahasuerus ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. He had a huge responsibility, but he gave himself to wine and committed blunder when his reasoning was benumbed. Esther chapter 3, verse 15 says, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city, Sushan, was perplexed. The city was perplexed, but the king sat down to drink. That is the power of wine. It makes people so insensitive to the perplexity of others, to the pain of others. It is Satan's tool to degrade men. Satan used wine here to benumb and to make King Ahasuerus make all bad decisions that led only to more perplexities and more confusion in his kingdom. We see many blunders recorded in the Bible while men are drunk. One of Noah's son was cursed because he saw his father's nakedness after he was drunk. Lot impregnated both his daughters and didn't even know it because he was so drunk. Nadab and Abihu were drunk and could not distinguish the difference between the sacred and common fire. So we must teach our brothers, our members, about the dangers of this habit. Temperance contests should be held in every church, and youth should be warned against every intoxicating thing. We will look at what lessons that we can learn from Esther. Now, she was Hadassah, was fair and beautiful, had neither father nor mother. She was an orphan, adopted by her uncle Mordecai. Her father's name was Abihail. She was obedient. Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as she was brought up with him. From childhood, she was obedient. Even in the palace, she did as Mordecai charged her to do. She concealed her identity of being a Jew, as Mordecai instructed her to do. And when the time came, she revealed it to the king. So she was obedient. She was lovable. Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. The king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. She was bold. So will I go in unto the king, go unto the king, which is not according to the law. If I perish, I perish. She was dependent on God. Fast ye for me, neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. She was wise. She planned 2 feasts at our home, and at the right time, when she saw the king in the state of mind to reason out well, she made her plea and reported about Haman. So she was lovable, bold, dependent on God, and wise. Esther already had everyone's favor. The king, set the royal crown upon her and made her queen instead of Vashti. She could have easily lied about her identity as a Jew. None knew it anyway till now. Why did she have to risk her life? Because she was a child of God. She cared for God's people. Sinful though they were, untied by family bond, yet she knew the Jews were chosen by God. Would we risk our lives for our church members to save our church? Do we know what it means to be a part of the remnant? So Esther, she chose to risk her own life so that she could save her people. If she would have chosen, she would have concealed her identity. Nobody knew except Mordecai, but she chose to stand up for her people. So likewise, we ought to um, we ought to also stand for our people when time comes. Would we risk our lives for our church to save our people? That what it means to be the part of a remnant. Okay. Now we'll see what we can learn from Haman. Now, Haman is the villain of this story. So he is an Agagite, and he is the son of Hamandata. Hamandata. So his life is perfect demonstration of following Bible verses. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. He made a pit and digged it, and is fallen into the ditch which he made. His mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. Be sure your sin will find you out. So we see that how Haman was so full of himself that when Mordecai refused to bow down before him, even though all everybody else was doing it, just one person refusing to do it hit him, and he decided that he will take revenge. And and then he fell into the same pit that he dug for Mordecai. We are never more like the devil than than we, than when we are proud. When we are proud, we feel hurt when others don't recognize who we are. We feel abused if we are not praised. We feel a constant need to be given attention and push our way to be seen and heard. So when we are proud, we must always remember that that is what led to Satan's fall. That is what made Lucifer the devil. So when we are proud, we must always remember that we are just mimicking what Lucifer was. So that was the characteristic that Haman had that led to his fall as well. Haman could have easily overlooked Mordecai as a Jew who was anyway going to be killed by the wicked commandment uh, than that he persuaded the king to pass. But pride is impatient. It cannot remain seated until it hurts and breaks down. He sought to destroy Mordecai, and God overruled. So already a decree was made that all the Jews will be killed on the 13th day of the month of Adar. But Haman could not wait. He wanted Mordecai to be dead. So he made a gallows where um, Mordecai would be hung. He was so impatient. Pride is impatient, and it cannot remain seated until it hurts and breaks down. So he wanted to destroy Mordecai so badly, but then God overruled, and it was he who fell in the same pit that he dug. The Bible records Haman, the son of Hamandata, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. Haman used his position and power not to destroy his enemies, now to destroy his enemies. We may have a tendency to do the same. If someone hurts us, when it is our turn, we tend to pay it back. For example, if a senior monitor troubled me, when I become a monitor next year, I will also trouble her sister or a foster sister, etc. But we need to be careful of doing that. We must not use our position, power, or influence to harm anyone. We cannot cherish hatred for long without expression. We will ultimately act it out. If I have hatred in my heart, if I cherish it, saying that I will not act on it, but it cannot we cannot cherish it without acting on it. It will ultimately come out. If I cherish hatred in my heart, it will come out one day or the other. Safety isn't forgiveness. The discretion of a man's deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over transgression. Proverbs 19 verse 11. Mm, okay. We will look at what lessons we can learn from Mordecai. Now, Mordecai is a kind man. He adopted Esther and probably remained unmarried so that he could care for Esther, as it is uncertain of the wife if the wife would care for Esther as much as him. She would prefer her own kids over Esther. So Mordecai is a kind man who probably remained unmarried. So just so that he could take care of Esther, because if he would have gotten married to anybody and have kids, he would not have cared for Esther the way he did. Mordecai was a Benjamite. Now we see that in chapter 2, verse 11, we see that Mordecai, every single day, he used to walk before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. That was a display of a father's love. He cared for Esther as a father would care for her. Mordecai sat at the king's gate. He saved the king's life by reporting the plans of two men who were plotting to kill the king. He was diligent at his work. While sitting at the king's gate, he heard two men whose names were Bigthan and Teresh. They were plotting to kill the king. So he reported this, and he was diligent at his work. The king had so commanded concerning him, Haman, but Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Mordecai was brave to disobey the king when it opposed his morals. So, as we know that the king had promoted Haman and instructed all the people to bow down before him. But Mordecai was brave enough to disobey the king. He said, "No, I'm not going to bow down," because it opposed his morals. The next thing that we see that Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. He did not think it below his dignity to listen to his daughter. He respected her position as a queen and knew that she said the right thing. He obeyed. Now, when the time came for Esther to come before the king and present her petition, Queen Esther asked Mordecai to proclaim a fast for her for 3 days. Mordecai was not proud, but he went his way and did according to what Esther has commanded. So we see that he did listen to her. He went and told all the Jews that we need to fast and pray for 3 days. We are not supposed to eat anything nor drink. So he did not consider it to be below his dignity to listen to his daughter. Mordecai could have taken pride that he saved the king's life, that his daughter was the queen, but Mordecai sat at the gate and continued his work faithfully. He did nothing to exalt himself, and in due time, God exalted him. So, Mordecai, he did not take any pride. He was a humble man. He could have exalted himself, saying that my daughter is the queen, but he did the same thing that he used to do before his daughter became a queen. And in due time, when the time was right, God exalted him. Mordecai got to stay in the house of Haman, and the king took off his ring and gave it to Mordecai. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with the garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. So when Mordecai was promoted and he was given a ring taken off from the king, all the people around him were happy. Entire the city of Sushan rejoiced and were glad. So we must live our lives in such a way that our people may have light and gladness, joy, honor through us. So when Mordecai was promoted, not he wasn't the only one who was happy. The entire city of Sushan rejoiced. Such was the light that Mordecai displayed around him. That people around him rejoiced when he rejoiced. They were filled with the same light that he had. They were experiencing the same joy and honor that he got. Finally, we'll look at Zeresh. Now, Zeresh was Haman's wife. So, unlike some men who keep secrets from their wives, Haman shared everything with Zeresh. So, he also shared it with his friends who seemed to be present with Zeresh almost always. We don't find even one instance of private talk. It was always Zeresh and his friends. He sent and called for his friends and Zeresh, his wife, and Haman told him off. And Haman told Zeresh, his wives, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him. So all the conversation that he had with his wife was not only between him and his wife. It was always in the presence of his other friends. There were no private talks between him and his wife. It was always in front of his friends. um, Chapter 5, verse 10 to 14, we see that Haman tells them of all the good things he had, but that it availed him nothing because of Mordecai. Right counsel at this time would have brought some sense to the man intoxicated with pride and self-esteem, but he was suggested unwisely that which was going uh, that wa- uh, that which was going to backfire on him. So they said, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. So Haman was so intoxicated with pride that he took it so personally that Mordecai was not bowing down before him. So the right advice would have saved him, but um, his wife and his friends, instead of giving him the right kind of counsel, they gave him an idea that make a gallows of 50 cubits and hang that person. And then we see that when the king honored Mordecai the very next day, they said the exact opposite thing. They came and told Haman that you will not prevail against him. Thou shalt not prevail against him, but thou shalt surely fall before him. We see the fickle mindedness of his wife and friends. One day they boldly tell him to build a gallows, tell the king, etc. Next day, when they saw the king is happy with Mordecai, they now change what they had said, and they said, "Thou shalt surely thou shalt surely fall before him." One day they encourage, other day they discourage. That's human ungodly counsel. Zeresh tried to pacify his pride instead of correcting his dissatisfaction. She should have led him to see the blessings of being honored by the king and queen. That is not, and that it's not possible to be respected by all. That we cannot please all people always. But she failed in doing so. We are quick to suggest, to counsel, to guide, and advise. However, we must ever remember that our wisdom is finite, and often we cannot offer the best advice, though we have experience and education. We must learn to pray before counsel. As spouse, we must not retaliate if our partners are disrespected. We must let them know that we respect them, even if others don't. So instead of Zeresh giving her wife her husband the right kind of advice, she just put fuel to the fire, and she gave the wrong kind of advice. So even it applies to us as well. When we try to counsel anybody, we in our own wisdom will always give the wrong advice, advices that are simply ungodly and it will only lead to the fall of men. So before giving any advice to anybody, any counsel to anyone, we should always humble ourselves and learn to pray before we counsel. We look at Harbona. So, Harbona is mentioned in uh, Esther chapter 7, verse 9. So, Harbona, he was one of the king's chamberlains. So, nothing remains secret for long. The walls hear it, the birds hear it. Esther chapter 7, verse 9, Harbona knew. So he knew Haman's plan and told it to the king at the right time. In Esther chapter 5, verse 10, we see that Haman called only for his friends and his wife. But Harmona, the king's chamberlain, came to know of his plan. So do not plan wicked things to hurt anyone. So sometimes it is a saying in Hindi that says "Diwalo ke vikan hote." So uh, when we plan things in secret, it will come into light. So the Bible warns us, curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy not the rich in thy bedchamber. For a bird of the air shall carry thy voice, and that which that had wings shall tell them matter. Ecclesiastes 10:20. So we need to be careful whom we share our secrets with. So Haman devised this plan in front of his wife and his friends, but Habona revealed it to the king when the time was right. Uh, the last lesson that we can learn from is from Haggai. So Haggai was the king's chamberlain, and he was the keeper of the women. Since this was a selection for the queen, many fair young virgins were chosen from all over all the provinces of the kingdom. He was their keeper and guided them with everything related to this selection. There must have been higher officials requesting him to favor their virgins. He could have favored based on his choice, caste, etc. But he chose not to do that. So when the conquest and when the pageant was when virgins from all over the province, 127 provinces came before Haggai. He was the keeper of all these women. There were women who were from higher classes as well, belonging to people of higher officials. Haggai would have easily favored all these people because he could have done, but um, did not he did not do that. He was honest and he favored only the one who he thought was right for the king. However, we see that Haggai was just. He showed Esther favor because she was worthy of it. Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. The maiden pleased him, and she obtained the kindness of him. And he, Haggai, speedily gave her such things which belonged to her. He preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Haggai was faithful in his post as the keeper of the women. He dealt faithfully with Esther. God used him to guide Esther. He did not show respect of persons. So we must also be fair in our work too. We must prove loyal in our responsibilities. So we must be like Haggai, always honest and faithful in everything that we do. Not honor people based on the positions that they hold, but on their abilities and their capabilities. So there are five more lessons that we can learn from the book of Esther. The first lesson is when not sleepy, make a list of your blessings, like the king. Now we see that after the first banquet of Esther, the king is not able to sleep, and at night the book of Chronicles were read before him. So he realized how Mordecai has saved. So sometimes when we are not sleepy, we usually scroll through our phones or we try to listen to music. So when not sleepy, why not make a list of the blessings that God has blessed us with? The second lesson that we can learn is when God delivers, you celebrate it. Now, after the deliverance of the Jews, after how Jews succeed against the Persians, Mordecai, he suggests that there should be a feast on the 14th and 15th day of the month of Adar. So they celebrated of how God delivered them from these Persians. So likewise, when God delivers, we need to celebrate it too. The third lesson is embarrassment is a part of life. Don't brood over it. So Haman was embarrassed. So likewise, sometimes you also get embarrassed. But it is a part of life. You're not supposed to be obsessed with it and find way to retaliate. The fourth lesson that we can learn is fast and pray when you're facing serious issues in life. Like just like how Esther, she would have faced the death decree if she would have gone in front of the king without his order. But she asked Mordecai to instruct all the Jews in the provinces to fast and pray. So when we face serious issues in life, we also ought to fast and pray. And finally, beware of intoxicating things and preserve your mind. When we intoxicate things, not only with alcohol, it can be anything. It can be the things we watch in our phones, Netflix, the songs that we listen to. All those things are intoxicating. It literally it disturbs our mind. It distorts our thoughts. So when we are intoxicated with all these worldly things, we make all the bad decisions that not only affects us but the people around us. We'll move on to the conclusion. So never compromise moral dignity. The first thing that we saw was Vashti did not compromise her moral dignity. She knew that king had commanded, but she knew that she was to make sure that she respected the marriage covenant, and her body was only for her husband, that was the king. So she did not compromise her moral dignity. The second lesson that the second thing that we can learn is follow only biblical counsel. Memucan, all the counsels that he gave were all ungodly. He gave counsels that broke the marriage to a point where Vashti was ordered not that she was not allowed to see the king, uh, and she was replaced by another queen. No to intemperance. From King Ahasuerus. King Ahasuerus, when intoxicated with alcohol and wine, he made all kinds of bad decisions. So we need to say no to intemperance, no to things that disturbs our thought process. So that is what we can learn from King Ahasuerus. Be a lovable person. Queen Esther, she was a lovable person. It was this that brought her in favor of Haggai, in favor of all the men, all the people in the court, in favor of the king, and likewise she was chosen as queen. Do not be proud. Haman was proud, which led to his fall. Just like how pride is something that led to Lucifer's fall. So when we are proud, we need to always remember we are just mimicking Lucifer. Be faithful and humble, like how Mordecai was. Mordecai was the queen's father. He saved the king's life. He should have exalted himself, but he was faithful and humble. But in due time, God was the one who exalted him. We also learn that we are supposed to be a wise wife. So we see that Zeresh, she did not give the right kind of counsel to her husband. At one point um, she was supportive of her husband, saying that make a gallows and hang the man Mordecai. But on the very next day she says that you will not you will fall before this man, you will fall before Mordecai. So we need to be wise in the counsels that we give to others, and no matter how educated we are, no matter how wise we think of ourselves, before giving counsel to anybody, we ought to pray. Speak truth at the right time. Harbona, he from the very beginning he knew what Haman had devised for Mordecai, but when the time was right, he spoke the truth at the right time. And finally we can learn that no res have no respect of persons. So Haggai did not have respects of big dignitaries. There were people who brought in their daughters who were of high officials, but he did not have respect for the positions that they held. He was loyal and diligent, and he was faithful in the work that was assigned to him. That was the keeper of the women, and he chose the one, and he chose the one that, and um, he made sure that the right person was brought in front of the king. That was Queen Esther. So these were the lessons that we learned from the book of Esther, and I would like to thank everyone for your time, and um it's a very nice book, and if you get time, I would encourage you to go through it, and you'll find many more lessons that can be drawn from this book.